Here is the title update 2.5 Meta Light Bowgun Pierce build with a Craftable Charm. Here is the Light Bowgun Pierce build but with a God Charm. Here is the Heavy Bowgun Pierce build with a Craftable Charm. And lastly, here is the Heavy Bowgun Pierce build with a God Charm. Hello everyone, it's Damo and I'm here with my good mate Harold.
Heyo!
Alright, we are back with our Pierce Heavy Bowgun and Light Bowgun builds for Title Update 2.5. Now to start us off, Harold, would you like to tell me what are the changes from Title Update 2.5 that are relevant to the builds we're going to be talking about today?
Yeah, certainly. So there's two major changes. That's going to be the shot ammo regen and the ballistics values. For shot ammo regen, Pierce 3 specifically went from needing 20 shots to regen on Pierce Light Bowgun down to 17. Now, these numbers are good. They get even better because our meta Pierce 3 Light Bowgun is Ray Dow, which you use a mod slot for the Rapid Fire mod, which is a 10% increase in shot regen. So it went from 18 down to 15. For ballistics, now what Capcom has done is just made it so the previous level 3 values are now our current level 2 values, and then they just gave us a better, closer, and long range for the new level 3 values.
Yeah, no, they're really good changes. Obviously, are extremely useful when it comes to optimizing our Pierce sets. And I think the ballistics one is one that goes unnoticed when you consider that on light bowgun specifically, you're going to be burst stepping back and forth, and can become quite difficult, even on a downed monster, to maintain that critical distance. Back in title update 2 and earlier than that. But now that we have ballistics being buffed, it's a lot easier to maintain critical distance, and you will notice that in your hunts. Now, the next thing I want to do in this sort of introduction or background section, Harold, we're going to discuss the relative power of Pierce Light Bowgun and Pierce Heavy Bowgun. So, when you play Pierce Light Bowgun, how do you find that, and how does it compare in terms of power to spread bowgunning?
To be quite honest with you, like just shooting Pierce with both is actually quite bad. But we are able to get around it on Pierce Light Bowgun through abusing burst steps. It's the entire identity of the Pierce Light Bowgun playstyle is to substitute its standard rapid fire shots with burst stepping, because the as far as the frame data goes, it goes from being 90 frames to shoot in rapid fire mode down to 55.
Mm-hmm.
Now I don't know what that actually equates to, like mathematically. Maybe you can help me out with that. But yeah, you're almost cutting the frames in half. As such, it goes from this not that great to okay, this is good. Okay, this is decent. The
Mm-hmm.
problem is that heavy bowgun doesn't have anything like that.
No.
And to make matters worse, the reload values are different for both light bowgun and heavy bowgun. So just so you know, the base reload values for Pierce light bowgun is 110 frames, but for heavy bowgun it's 139 frames, and that's quite bad. And so when we're able to, speed up the firing through the method of burst stepping, when we compare the two and realize that of the two, the light bowgun has the quicker TM um, reload value, it's clear to see why light bowgun edges out over heavy bowgun time and time again.
Mm-hmm.
Now, heavy bowgun is able to make up its damage through the use of Wyvern Heart or incorporating Wyvern Heart into its gameplay loop. So it's a unique way to kind of make up its deficiencies.
Yeah, look, one thing I'll quickly mention just to the viewers when we talk about these frame numbers, uh, all of these frame data tests are done at 60 frames per second. So going from 90 frames, that means you're shooting every 1.5 seconds. Going from 90 down to 55 means going from shooting once every 1.5 seconds to shooting more, just a little bit more than once per second, right? So it is a massively increased fire rate when you use burst step on raw pierce. And then the other thing is if you're looking at, the reload frame data, it's around that 120 frames, which means it takes 2 seconds to reload. Now, it's a little bit faster than that on light bowgun, but it's a little bit slower than that on heavy bowgun. So, yeah, light bowgun is winning here, and heavy bowgun can make up some of the damage differences with Wyvern Heart. However, something that you're going to see in some background footage at some point in this video, I'll probably line it up so that that occurs as I'm talking about this now. But to use Wyvern Heart effectively, you need the monster to be stationary for a bit of time. The way that we used to do this was we used to just flash the monster, and while the monster's blind, we can just send out all of our Wyvern Heart ammo. But the problem now is, with these new 9-star monsters, you can only flash them like 3 or 4 times, depending on the monster. And so that's less openings that you can then use you can like dump your Wyvern Heart gauge. But then the other thing is the monsters have more health on top of that. So it becomes more difficult to use Pierce Heavy Bowgun, not just through the fact that it's weaker and it's going to make hunts take longer, but that you get less openings to utilize the Wyvern Heart. I'm going to recommend multiplayer for this kind of ammo type. And of course, you can do it solo, but you're going to find it hard to actually use your whole Wyvern Heart gauge without getting hit. Now, we've been talking about Wyvern Heart quite a bit, and that's why you're not going to be seeing the Gore Magala heavy bowgun used here. The Gore Magala heavy bowgun has ST standard mode level 2, which gives a 20% buff on its pierce ammo. So if you're just shooting pierce ammo, yeah, the Gore Magala heavy bowgun is going to be stronger. But the Mizu heavy bowgun has ignition mode ST2, which means that its Wyvern Heart is going to be 20% stronger. So that's why here we're going to be focusing on getting our Wyvern Heart as strong as possible and then simply building up that gauge with the Pierce ammo rather than trying to spec completely into the Pierce ammo for heavy bowgun.
All right, so to start things off, Pierce Light Bowgun. Now, the approach that we're going to take here is by utilizing full gore, but taxing ourselves or making mandatory the skill combination of Constitution 5 and Stamina Surge 2. Now, the reason for this is because of Fulgur's set bonus, Second Wind, which grants us a extra stamina bar. When using your stamina of that stamina bar, Max Might doesn't turn off, right? However, you're going to need points of constitutions and to some extent stamina surge to make it so that all of your burst steps occur in that 25 stamina window, so to speak. Now, the reason why we ultimately ended up landing on Constitution 5 and Stamina Surge 2 is through a combination of testing in game, testing with basically frame perfect inputs, and then calculating through just viewing recorded footage and then finding out. And it was actually quite hard trying to figure out what was like our true max might uptime, because you figure when we're charging up the gauge, we pretty much have max might up near 100% of the time. But it's when we are burst stepping, like what sort of concessions do we make for losing points of max might, or not points of max mites, but losing max might uptime during the burst step, because that the mere action of burst stepping is it's very stamina heavy. And so what we ended up finding out is that when we compare it to the rotation of 12 shots of burst stepping, or even 13 shots of burst stepping, we found that when you have Constitution 5 and you have frame perfect inputs. And the way that you can tell that you have frame perfect inputs is if when you're in the training room and you are doing the burst stepping, if you just not focusing on the training dummy for a second, but just focus 100% your eyes on the stamina bar, you know you have frame perfect inputs if it goes down and then goes down again without like that microsecond, nanosecond of it then like recharging. When you've gotten to the point where you can do burst steps where it's like perfectly picking up at the earliest possible frame that you're able to, that's a perfect burst step. Now, the plus side is not everyone's going to be able to achieve a perfect burst step. So Constitution 5 is going to provide even greater value. But with just Constitution 5 alone, we saw that with perfect burst steps, you were able to maintain your max might for 8 out of your 12 shots. Now, when we throw in Stamina Surge, as long as you are moving, and actually this holds true for the Constitution 5 as well. When you're reloading, do not do the like the evade reload. Not evade reload. That's Steve's skill. But don't do like the sidestep reload. When you're going to reload after a burst step, just do a manual reload because during the manual reload, that's when you're regaining. And a pro tip is when you're manually reloading, make sure to move either to the left or to the right because not many people know this, but if you are burst stepping, and I'm just going to make up some directions, left, right, and then you stop completely to do a manual reload, if your feet are not moving, it delays your stamina from recovering. However, if you're doing a manual reload whilst moving, your stamina recovers right away. And that is not specific to having any points of stamina surge. That's just an in-game mechanic.
Mm.
So by doing so, you're able to get more of a value through points of stamina surge. So we found that Constitution 5 was 8. With Constitution 5, 1 point of stamina surge, it was 10. And then Constitution 5 stamina surge 2 was roughly like maybe 11. Damo, any thoughts?
Yeah, so I quickly just wanted to mention like the whole sidestep reload, manual reload, things like that. Um, the reason why we're saying to do a manual reload, so that just means on PlayStation you press X. It's whatever the button is to reload the gun that you would use. Because most of the time when we want to reload, we obviously just press the fire button when we don't have any ammo left in our clip. But of course, there is a way to just reload the gun. I'm not sure what the control is on PC or on Xbox, but I know that on PlayStation it's pressing not X, it's triangle, right?
Triangle.
But the thing is that most people when they're burst stepping, right, they're going to burst step left, right, and then when they go to reload the clip, instead they're just going to do the slide evade, which happens because you're just going to press you're going to press the dodge button again. Now, if people weren't familiar on how to chain burst steps on Pierce ammo, there's basically a really simple way to do it, and that is to just do a burst step the first time. So by, being in focus mode, so just holding, with the trigger. So on PlayStation, it's going to be L2. So you're in focus mode, and then you want to press a directional input, the dodge button, and the shoot button all at the same time. You press all three of those at the same time, and then do not let go of the shoot button. Keep on holding that button down, and then every single time you press the dodge button, you're going to automatically do a burst step. Now, there's plenty of videos that have been made on this already, but I knew I had to quickly touch on it here. But then it's going to be very important that when you are going to reload, don't automatically do a slide reload by just pressing the dodge button whilst keeping the trigger held down. Obviously, do not let go of the trigger. Keep holding the trigger, but then press the other button. So on PlayStation, it's triangle to do that, what we're going to call a manual reload. Not only is it faster to do that, it's easier to sort of maintain position with the monster, but you're also going to give your stamina a chance to recover, right? And that's going to be really important for maintaining the maximum might uptime on one of these Fulgore sets. So that was one thing I just wanted to quickly touch on. And then the other one was we've been talking about these perfect inputs and if you're quote unquote good enough to get perfect inputs. The thing is that often when you're in a hunt and you're actually trying to nail these perfect inputs, you're going to do the burst steps too quickly. And when you do the burst steps too quickly, you end up doing extra slides, which slows down your rate of fire and then obviously uses more stamina. So rather than trying to be too fast with your shots, you're always like naturally when playing Pierce, you're going to be that little bit slower. You're not going to shoot every 55 frames, you might shoot every 58 frames. And you're going to see that slight bit of stamina recovery. And even that 3 frames can just be a matter of you quickly looking at the monster to re-aim your gun to make sure that you hit. Because you're better off shooting every 58 frames and actually hitting the monster than you are shooting with 55 frames and missing the monster. So it's that split second delay between shots that's actually going to increase your max might uptime from, I mean, we were saying 8 out of 12, 8 to 11 out of 12, depending on the levels of stamina surge and constitution. But realistically, you will have it up 100% of the time if you take a split second to re aim your trigger at the monster. Now, there will be times where you're going to nail those perfect inputs, and it's times where you don't really need to re aim, and that's going to be on downs. But otherwise, you're pretty much always going to maintain that max might uptime. Harold, did you have any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I think it's important that you were able to explain it in a slightly different way because essentially both what Damo and I are saying are essentially the same thing. Like most of the power of this build comes from the proper knowledge on how to burst step and when to manually reload. Now, earlier when I was speaking about like frame perfect inputs, that was more so the stress tests, right?
Mm.
Because when you like I don't know about you, but to me, it's quite impressive that in the absolute best case scenario, we're still getting really good value out of Constitution 5 and Stamina Surge 1 and 2, right? So it
Mm-hmm.
stands to reason in a regular hunt when you're repositioning, re-aiming, um, just just trying to maintain this rhythm that you're not going to have those frame perfect inputs. I don't have frame perfect inputs, and so that's when Constitution 5 and even Stamina Surge 1 starts pulling through in a big way. And like how Damo said, in theory, you should probably be able to get like your entire rapid fire gauge have it be so that max might is up 100% of the time during the rapid fire gauge, which is really good, right? We're just saying in like the most extreme case, you're going to have it anywhere from 8 to 11 of your 12 shots. And again, if you were to ask me, that's quite impressive.
Yeah, look, do you remember when we were actually testing this, Harold? I mean, this was now like a month or two ago, but when we were testing the uptime of Max Might with perfect inputs, we're in the training area. We're not even trying to shoot the dummy, right? We're just trying to see the perfect inputs. Do you remember how hard it was to actually get 12 perfect inputs in a row?
Yes, it actually was very, very hard, but it was important for our testing
Mm-hmm.
to like stress test like the absolute maximum. Like now, a buddy of ours, Scrub, now he's pretty consistent at getting those frame perfect inputs, but even some of the footage that he sent to me, and the word footage is very is really much is very much the operative word here, is because the way that we have gotten this frame data is from Scrub sending me footage and just literally counting frame by frame by frame. So once all that was done, I had asked him to send me as close to frame perfect um, burst steps as he could, and he got them a few times. But even him, he would drop them every so often. So again, we were just doing this for a stress test and found that we were getting pretty good mileage out of Con 5 and a point of stamina surge or two.
Yeah, look, all that's to say is that Folgore is going to really help these kind of builds here because it's going to give you really good uptime on max might, and that sort of gives us a nice explanation as to why certain skills are on the build. Plenty of these are very self-explanatory, but those are definitely the ones that required, quite the in-depth analysis. But something that's going to be nice and simple for us now is when we take a look at non-craftable charms. The very first
Hmm.
thing that you can do is you can get a charm that's going to have the same efficiency as the craftable charm. So the craftable charm we were using before was the Agitator 2 charm. But now what we can do is we can use a charm that has Agitator 1 and a level 3 slot. So pretty obviously you're going to slot in that second level of Agitator. And then you're also going to pick up a weapon skill. Now the weapon skill in this case can be either opening shot or ballistics. And if you get one of those with that agitator plus a 3 slot, now bear in mind this is only a rarity 5 charm, so it's very common to get one of those two charms. You get one of those two charms, and you're now able to put ballistics 3 on the build. So you either get that third point of ballistics just on the charm, or you get a point of opening shot on the charm, and then you slot in a level of ballistics on the gun. And when you do that, you got that ballistics 3, which you will feel that in hunts. You are going to be in crit distance even more. And when the Arkveld or whatever monster tries to run after one of your teammates, you're going to be able to maintain critical distance a lot more easily, and you're going to get a lot more DPS done. And it's sort of an indirect way of getting more damage, right? Because it's not like when you shoot the training dummy, you're going to see a bigger number with ballistics. But when you're in a real hunt, you're going to feel the difference there. And it's much better to do that than to try and get a fourth point of critical boost, which you could do, but it's definitely better to just go for that extra level of ballistics. And that's something that we've seen a lot in testing. Did you have any thoughts, Harold, on the Rarity 5 build version? Rarity 5
No,
charm
not
build?
really. Not really. The only thing I will say is what the damage penalty is. The damage penalty for being too close is 40%, so you only do 60% of your damage. And then the damage penalty for being too far is 90%, so you only do
Mm.
10% of your damage. So, that third point of ballistics that has been like buffed even more than what the title update 2 values were previously for it really do help.
Yeah, gotcha. Thanks for that. Really good touch to add on the extra amounts of ballistics. And so now we look at what happens when we get a God Charm, right? So I'm obviously going to show the God Charm here on screen, but it's essentially a level of Agitator, and then you're going to have, you'll see here, the one we got on screen has a level of piercing shots, and then it has, the weapon slot and then two armor slots. Now, you're only actually going to need one of those armor slots, but of course, getting a second armor slot is never a bad thing, right? You can always just chuck in some blindsider or some adaptability or whatever skill of your choice there. But it's really important that we do get, the other things like that weapon slot, the piercing shots, and then the point of agitator. What this is going to allow us to do is when we stick piercing shots in our build, that is just an instant 5% damage boost. Now, on a build that's got more than an average affinity of 64.5%, it is better to use 3 points of critical boost than it is to use that level 3 slot on the weapon for piercing shots. However, you've got to think that when you have this much space on the build, you would technically have enough for crit boost 6, right? Now, you have crit boost 5 with no piercing shots or crit boost 3 with piercing shots. Well, at that point, the piercing shots version with crit boost 3 is going to be stronger. And then, of course, you can just rework your decorations to have, you keep them the same as have the ballistics 2 in the 2 slot, opener in the 1 slot, and then put that third level of ballistics in the weapon slot on the charm. That will work. Now, another combination that's going to work here is if your charm, instead of having that level of piercing shots, if it instead has 3 points of ballistics, that's going to be able to get you the same set of weapon skills. And then just to reiterate, those weapon skills are going to be critical boost 3, ballistics 3, opening shot 3, and then piercing shots 1. You're going to see 2 levels of slugger, but those 2 levels of slugger are just because they come on the radar. Oh, sorry, it's 1 level of slugger. It's on the radar gun. Now, I will say that obviously an Agitator 1 charm, and there's no level 3 slot on it, so we do have to lose some amount of armor skills to make this work. But fortunately for us here, all we're losing is 1 point of stamina surge. So if you guys have skipped to this part in the video and you want to know how important that stamina surge was, just go back a couple minutes and Harold and I have a big analysis on why stamina surge is an important part of this build. And losing 1 level, going from 2 to 1, it will make a difference, but it's not the end of the world. Harold, did you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, no, so the only thing I really wanted to reiterate is how cool it is that you can go for the Pierce Up 1, Agi 1 with a weapon slot, or Ballistics 3, Agi 1 with a weapon slot. I thought that that was pretty neat because it's 2 charms that fundamentally look different, but they provide the same value. So it's just something to keep an eye out for, guys. And yeah, that, like I said, that final point, or that losing 1 point of stamina surge is technically fine. It, like, stamina surge is more so, how should I put it, like insurance, right? So as long as you have 1 point of the insurance, and this insurance is making sure that you really get your stamina back when you need it during burst steps. Having more is better, right? But if you were in a situation where you can pick up just so much more on the build, that 3rd point of ballistics and pierce up, and only lose a point of stamina surge, then it's a very worthwhile trade.
Now, something that is also very important, guys, is that when you're using any of these light bowgun builds here, you need to make 2 of this radar gun and have the decorations being identical between the 2 guns. And why this is going to be really important is because you start the hunt, use the entire rapid fire gauge of gun 1, and then hop on your sacred, swap to your other gun, and then you're going to have that full rapid fire gauge right there ready to go. And then after 4 minutes of using that second gun, you can actually go back to the first gun, so swap on your sacred again, and then that gun's gauge is going to be full.
You can technically do that with heavy bowgun as well.
True.
So, because the point of the heavy bowgun version is Pierce Heart, you can start off a hunt with a Wyvern Heart, and because the monster's going to roar, and the builds are going to have the heavy bowgun builds. Well, both builds are going to have earplugs. What's going to happen is you're going to during roar 1, or the initial roar, you're going to be doing your Wyvern Heart, but during that, you should be doing enough damage to trigger the Agitator roar. So you're going to have 2 roars in which you can fully expel a Wyvern Heart. And so the option here is actually just another Mizu, exactly how you're doing the Raidao, 2 Raidao light bowguns. You can do 2 Mizus. Or if you want to be kind of unique and not really lose anything in the process, you can actually go Gypsaros heavy bowgun for gun 1, and just you just won't ever switch back to it. Not really, because it has a stronger base raw 230, and I've already looked into this, guys, but it doesn't interfere with our recommended talismans, Rarity 5 or God Talisman. Everybody might be saying, well, why not Kongalala? Well, Kongalala has special ammo boost already built in, and so it's going to interfere with the God Charms that we've already basically calculated this with and are recommending to you. Gypsaros doesn't, though. You can run the exact same weapon deco loadout, and the difference between Gypsaros and Kongalala is, although it's nice that Kongalala does get para, the Gypsaros gets 10 extra raw. So just something to consider.
All right, now moving on to heavy bowgun, we have our updated build for heavy bowgun Pierce with Wyvern Heart right here. You guys are going to see on screen that it uses what we now call the Gore Guts layout of armor. So it's 2 pieces of Gore Magala and then 3 pieces of armor that's going to give us that Lord's Soul set bonus with Guts. You know, that 5% damage boost as well as the ability to survive an attack that would have killed you makes it quite comfortable to use and is obviously going to be important when we verse these 9-star monsters. There's a couple skills on here that are, you know, sort of comfort skills, but they're going to like direct or indirectly increase the DPS. One of the big ones being earplugs, because you can then use roars as a time, especially at the start of the hunt. You can use those roars as a way to dump your Wyvern Heart gauge. And then as like a nice general comfort skill, Quick Sheath level 3, it is usually a good idea if you need to heal to go onto your Sacred, which will automatically sheath your weapon for you. But for those things where you don't want to go on your Sacred, like, you know, you want to sheath your weapon so you can place a trap, things like that, it's nice to have Quick Sheath 3 on the build. Do you have any thoughts for this build here, Harold?
None directly, but what I will say is it's quite nice that we are finally able to get out a updated title update 2.5 Pierce Heart build. I do know that from being around Reddits and certain Discords, uh, it is a requested build to be upgraded, and we just have been fawning over Seregios Red HBG that we haven't had gotten the opportunity to do so. So I'm really happy that we are finally able to present the updated title update 2.5 version of this build.
Yeah, nice. And look, now being title update 2.5, the big talking point is going to be those new charms. And this build here gets a really nice boost from having even just a simple rarity 5 charm. So similar to Light Bowgun, it's going to be an agitated charm with a level 3 slot, which essentially makes it, you know, agitated 2 just like the craftable charm. But if you can get 1 level of special ammo boost on that charm, which, you know, is a very simple rarity 5 charm, then what it means is that you can rework your decos so that you only have 1 level of special ammo boost slotted onto the gun. And this lets you pick up critical boost level 5. So your critical hits go from doing 37% more damage to doing 40% more damage. So that's a nice buff there from getting a solid rarity 5 charm. Then if we go into getting a God Charm, this is where things get pretty interesting. So as we know with these God Charms, these Rarity 8 Charms, you get to pick up extra weapon skills, but you do have to lose some armor skills. And there's an interesting way that we rework the build in order to work around such a God Charm. So the God Charm here is obviously going to be, as we see on screen, Special Ammo Boost 2. Then it's going to have a level of Opening Shot, a level of Agitator, and the weapon decoration slot. Now, of course, this kind of charm can come with a couple level 1 armor slots, but those aren't needed for the build. They would just be for your own personal comfort. So what this allows us to do is that it allows us to actually gain 3 points of opening shot. Now, we had a bit of a discussion this one and also did some testing. Opening shot versus focus, because focus is going to mean your gauge charges quicker so that you can use Wyvern Heart more often, which is obviously, you know, great for the build. But what opening shot does is opening shot is going to make you reload faster, meaning that you shoot your pierce ammo faster, which is also going to lead to your gauge filling up quicker. So it's going to do the same thing as focus, but it's also going to be a little bit more comfortable because, as we said earlier in the video, isn't it like 140 frames? Or 139. It's a really high number, and being able to cut 30% of the reload frames is going to be really nice because it's during that over a 2-second animation that you're most likely to get hit when you're playing this build. Also, Opener has that added benefit to making your first shot a little bit more powerful. So that's what we're going to have here. Now, in terms of reworking the build, we are going to be losing 2 points of latent power and 1 point of weakness exploit for this God Charm. However, we are going to gain 2 points of evade extender and 2 points of peak performance. So it's a bit of a rework for those armor skills, but then we are going to get 3 levels of opening shot. Harold, did you have any quick thoughts about the God build here?
Um, yeah. So, as far as the God build is concerned, and how and why we're focusing more on opener over focus, is because unlike light bowgun, heavy bowgun already actually has really good gauge regen or passive gauge regen just to begin with. So, like, I'll say this just for the sake of comparison, but passively, it takes light bowgun 2 minutes to regen its gauge. However, heavy bowgun, it takes 60 seconds. And we're talking about when a heavy bowgun has its worst value, which is a ignition gauge recovery level 1. Now,
Mm-hmm.
if that's bolstered any further, because sometimes some weapons come with ignition gauge recovery level 2 just naturally on the build, um, then it's even more. It's even shorter, but not by a considerable margin. So focus, what that's going to do is probably drop that 60 seconds down to 45 seconds, but that 15 seconds you're probably going to make up by having less points of opener because of how long the reload is for Pierce. And the thing is like Pierce, the more time that you spend reloading for Pierce, the more time that you're going to be spending um, vulnerable, right? I mean, this is a thing with older monster hunters, right? If you're stuck in a reload animation, that is a window in which you can get hit. It's no different here. So the longer it takes for you to reload, the longer it takes for you to potentially perfect guard an attack, the longer it'll take for you to potentially like initiate an evasive action. So really, this is just we're bolstering the Pierce side of it because we want to cycle the Pierce ammo quicker, but it also has small compounding effects that stack up on top of each other. Like not putting ourselves in a bad position versus the value of focus when our gauge recovery is already good to begin with. That's kind of why we've leaned more towards the opener side of things. Now, if you want to put focus, go ahead. But my question, or my invitation to you all is, if you do end up trying focus, please let us know in the comments section if you, in the God version of the build, if you liked it more than you liked Opener 3. I've tried it because prior to Title Update 2.5, we didn't have the luxury of running Opener, so we would run like focus on like the Kongalala heavy bowgun, um, and we're talking like Title Update 0, and that was rough. So sound off in the comment section if you still like the points of focus over versus opener.
Yeah, look, a lot of discussion just then, Harold, about the whole gauge regen stuff. Something I'm going to throw out there right now for the viewer. And I mean, anyone who's been following the channel, they're going to know now, if a weapon is built around gauge regen, Corrupted Mantle is your mantle. So all of the builds in this video, Corrupted Mantle is a must. At the moment, so we know in Title Update 3, Capcom have confirmed that between quests, whenever you start a quest, you're instantly going to get your mantle refreshed. But for now, rest between those quests if you're going to be using a Pierce build, on your quests, because Corrupted Mantle makes a huge difference to your gauge regen, not just when you put it on, but then also for that 90 seconds that it's active for, you're going to get I think it's like a 50% better gauge regen. It's going to be really just important for both your light bowgun Pierce builds and your heavy bowgun Pierce Wyvern Heart builds. Of course, Pierce Wyvern Heart, you can use things like Wyvern Piercer, but Wyvern Piercer is only going to out DPS Wyvern Heart during a down. And if the monster is up and moving at all, then it's going to be a lot more difficult to use Wyvern Piercer. But of course, all these builds could be used with Wyvern Piercer. And then just the last note is in terms of food, right? So, Harold, if I'm using these, I'm eating for Moxie, no questions asked. Are there any other foods that you would recommend eating for, or is it mostly just sticking to Moxie?
Um, it's mostly Moxie, right? I mean, an argument could be made for black belt low if you end up not getting all the points of constitution that you need for the light bowgun version of the build, but really, talking about the light bowgun version of the Pierce builds, Constitution 5 is mandatory, and if you were going to substitute like lesser points, then the only recommendation I would make is still eat for Moxie, and if you're at like Constitution, let's say 4, and you just can't fit it, then just drink a dash juice to get your Constitution 4 to be pretty much a value of Constitution 5. But black belt low is technically an option. Do I recommend it? Not necessarily, but for for the purpose of transparency, I do want to say that that is technically an option.
Yeah, look, I think a really important point regarding the Constitution and Stamina Surge on the Pierce light bowgun builds is that those skills, they are almost free, right? Like the actual opportunity cost of running those skills is really low. I know there's going to be some people in the comments who say, well, why don't I eat for black belt low and then have a dash juice and then I don't need to run this Constitution Stamina Surge stuff. I can, fit more skills on my build. But if you actually go back and have a look at the amount of extra skills you can fit, you're literally going to get, guys, like one more level of Wex, and that's it. And the reason why I say that is, well, A, because we've tested it out, and B, because the Gore Magala armor comes with Constitution, and Constitution is a level 1 armor deco, and level 1 armor decos, there's not anything that great to put in there. Yes, there's antivirus, but after antivirus, there's not going to be many skills that you put in there. So, yeah, basically what I'm saying is low opportunity cost there. And if you were to go through all those extra hoops, all you're getting from that is one extra point of Wex. If you want to do that, you definitely can do it. And it will, obviously increase your average DPS by a slight amount. However, the amount of time that it takes for you to actually go and eat those dash juice, whether you're pre-buffing before a hunt or drinking them in a hunt, it's not actually making your overall time spent killing monsters faster. Because let's say that it does take a couple seconds off the hunt, the amount of time taken between hunts to pre-buff with that dash juice is not worth how much quicker it makes your hunt. So that's just something I wanted to throw out there. Is it an option people can do? Yes. But is it something that I recommend? No. All right, guys. Well, look, I just want to thank everyone so much for listening up until this point. This is obviously one of our longer videos, but we covered a lot and there was a lot of analysis here. If you enjoyed, leave a like or a comment. Thank you so much. See you next time.